Title: When the Moon Wept Silver. Listen closely, children, to a tale from the old village by the river, where the moon once wept for the hearts of mortals. There lived a girl named Liora, gentle as morning mist, who gave away her last clay pot to help a neighbor's sick child. The villagers praised her kindness, their voices rising like prayers into the night sky. But watching from the shadows stood Sorin, a young man whose heart burned with a different fire. "That praise should be mine," he whispered, his jaw tight with bitterness. That same night, something impossible happened. The moon, hanging low and luminous above the river, began to weep. Silver tears fell from her face, each one glowing like captured starlight, as they dripped into the dark water below. Elder Mahin rushed to the riverbank, her ancient eyes wide with wonder. She raised her trembling hands and declared to the gathering crowd, "The moon mourns for our world. A single tear grants a fate reborn, but only to the pure-hearted." The villagers gasped and whispered prayers. But Sorin's eyes burned with something darker than devotion. He stepped back into the shadows, his fists clenched white, and whispered words that would curse them all. "Then I will take it myself." Before dawn broke, when mist still clung to the earth like spirits unwilling to leave, a magnificent creature descended from the sky. The silver heron was no ordinary bird. Its feathers shimmered like liquid moonlight, each movement leaving trails of silver in the air. It landed gracefully before Liora as she knelt by the river's edge, and to everyone's astonishment, the sacred bird bowed its elegant head. It had chosen her. The heron's dark eyes held ancient wisdom as it turned toward the water. With one wing, it gestured to a spot beneath the surface where something glowed with otherworldly light, a moon tear, drifting like a fallen star in the current. Liora's breath caught in her throat. She felt unworthy of such a gift, yet the heron waited patiently, as if it had known her heart since before she was born. Hidden in the reeds, Sorin watched everything. His nails dug into his palms until they bled. The moon had chosen her. The sacred bird had chosen her. Even fate itself seemed to favor Liora over him. "No!" he breathed, his voice trembling with rage and pain. "If the moon chooses her, then I will steal what she's given." His shadow stretched long behind him, darker than the night itself. The underwater cavern glowed like the inside of a dream. Liora dove deep, guided by the silver heron's light, cutting through the darkness. The water was cold, but the moon tear ahead pulsed with warmth. It drifted slowly, waiting, as if it recognized her approach. With trembling hands, she reached out and gently cupped the tear in her palms. It felt like holding pure hope. But as she kicked toward the surface, something terrible happened. Strong hands grabbed her shoulders and shoved her down. Water rushed into her mouth as Sorin's face, twisted with desperation, appeared above her. He ripped the silver tear from her grasp with violent force, his eyes wild and unseeing. The moment his fingers closed around it, the tear burned. It seared into his palm like a brand, leaving a mark that glowed angry red against his skin. Sorin screamed, bubbles erupting from his mouth. The water around him began to change. What had been clear and silver turned murky, then dark, then black as ink. Liora surfaced, gasping and coughing, just in time to see something rise from the depths behind Sorin, something massive and terrible, shaped exactly like him. A shadow. His shadow. But alive. Sorin stumbled home as dawn broke, his hand throbbing with pain. Inside his small house, lit by flickering oil lamps, he examined the mark on his palm. It had stopped burning, but the silver had turned to black, like a scar made of night itself. He told himself it was worth it. He had the moon's blessing now. He had what Liora was given. But then he noticed something wrong. His shadow on the wall wasn't moving with him. When he stepped left, it stayed still. When he raised his hand, it didn't follow. Instead, it seemed to watch him with invisible eyes, waiting. His mother entered carrying soup, concern creasing her weathered face. "Sorin, what happened to your hand?" "Nothing," he snapped, hiding his palm. "Leave me alone." The harshness in his voice surprised even him. But what happened next turned his blood to ice. His shadow lunged. It moved like a living thing, stretching across the floor toward his mother. Before Sorin could scream a warning, the shadow plunged into the bowl of water she held, devouring her reflection hole. His mother gasped and collapsed, her skin turning pale, her eyes dimming as if someone had stolen the light from within her. Sorin understood then, with horror that crushed his chest. A stolen tear becomes a curse. There was only one witness to his crime, Liora. And witnesses, Sorin decided with a heart hardened by fear, could not be allowed to speak. He found her in the whispering forest, where ancient trees grew so close their branches wove together, like fingers clasped in prayer. The forest earned its name from the constant sound-soft voices in languages forgotten, warnings passed from root to leaf. Sorin moved through the shadows, his cursed shadow leading him like a hunting dog. It stretched ahead, sniffing for Liora's trail, growing larger and more eager with each step. But the forest remembered kindness. As Sorin drew near, tree roots shifted beneath Liora's feet, creating paths away from danger. Branches bent to hide her. The whispers grew louder, urgent. "Run, gentle one, run." Then, in a burst of silver light that made Sorin shield his eyes, the magnificent heron appeared. It spread its wings wide, positioning itself between hunter and hunted, its feathers blazing with lunar power. The bird's voice entered Liora's mind, ancient and sad. "The moon saw your heart long before this night, child. She has always seen." Behind them, Sorin screamed his fury to the uncaring sky. "If I cannot have the moon's blessing, then I'll tear it from the heavens themselves." Elder Mahin's hut smelled of dried herbs and old paper. Scrolls covered every surface, their edges yellowed with age and forbidden knowledge. Liora knelt before the elder, her chest still heaving from the chase. "Please," she begged, "tell me how to save him, how to break this curse." Mahin's ancient eyes filled with sorrow. She unrolled a scroll covered in faded ink and drawings of shadow beasts devouring their hosts. "Long ago, another stole a moon tear. His name is lost to time, but his fate is not. The shadow consumed him piece by piece until nothing remained, not even bones." Liora's blood ran cold. There must be a way. Only one. Mahin's finger traced a symbol on the scrollless circle of light breaking chains of darkness. The blessing of returning light, an act of true compassion from the wronged. You must choose to save the one who wronged you, with no hate in your heart. At that moment, a villager burst through the door. Elder, Liora's father, he's collapsed. His spirit is fading. Liora's world tilted. The stolen tears curse was spreading, poisoning those connected to Sorin's crime. Her father was dying. She faced an impossible choice: save her innocent father, or save Sorin, who had tried to murder her. Liora closed her eyes and whispered words that would decide everything. I will save them both, even if it costs me everything. At the heart of the forest, where moonlight gathered in a silver pool that never dried, the moon spirit waited. She appeared as a woman veiled in starlight, her eyes liquid and ancient, containing galaxies that had watched worlds be born and die. The very air around her shimmered with power that made Liora's knees weak. You seek to break darkness with light, the spirit said, her voice like winds through crystal. But first, you must prove your heart is truly pure. The pool's surface rippled, and suddenly Liora was drowning in visions. She saw her father dying, his last breath escaping, while she stood too far away to save him. She saw herself twisted by bitterness, becoming cruel like Sorin, her gentle heart replaced with stone. She saw the village burning while she watched, unable to help, their disappointed faces asking why she had failed them. Each vision carved into her soul like knives. Tears streamed down her face. The pain was unbearable. But through it all, Liora refused to let hatred take root. She remembered her father's teachings. Compassion is not weakness. It is the strongest choice. The visions shattered like broken glass. The moon spirit touched Liora's chest, and warmth flooded through her, the gift of silver courage, a light that would never fade. Sorin's shadow grows, the spirit warned, her voice heavy with sorrow. Tonight it will consume its master whole. The palace ruins stood at the village's edge, crumbling stones covered in moss and regret. This is where Sorin hid, pressing his back against cold walls, watching his shadow grow impossibly large. It covered the ground around him, climbing the walls, spreading like spilled ink. It had become bigger than him, darker than midnight, and it no longer obeyed. Worsit spoke. Using his own voice, it whispered his deepest fears. You were never loved, Sorin, never chosen, never good enough. Stop. Sorin clutched his head, his marked palm burning. Your mother feared you, the village pitied you, even the moon looked away in disgust. You're lying. But the words struck true because part of him had always believed them. He tried to command the shadow, to force it back into submission, but the curse had reversed everything. The shadow was master now. It moved his arms without permission, turned his head toward the river, and Sorin realized, with absolute horror, that he no longer controlled his own body. The shadow smiled with his mouth, a terrible, wrong expression on his face. Then it began dragging him, step by unwilling step, toward the river, where the moon's reflection waited on the dark water, toward his final doom. The village square filled with terrified whispers as the moon above began to change. Her silver face dimmed, turning copper, then blood red. An eclipse was coming, unnatural and wrong, as if the heavens themselves recoiled from the curse spreading below. The silver heron landed before Liora with urgent grace. When the moon overturns her light, it warned, the curse will demand its final payment. All debts must be settled when darkness swallows silver. At that moment, Liora's father collapsed in the square. His skin had turned grey as ash, his breathing shallow and rattling. The curse was claiming him, feeding on his life to strengthen the shadow that had grown from stolen blessing. Liora ran to him, cradling his head in her lap. His eyes barely focused on her face. "My daughter," he whispered weakly, "don't throw your life away for someone who doesn't deserve." "Hush." She kissed his forehead, tears falling onto his cheeks. Compassion isn't about deserving, it's about choosing light when darkness seems easier. She laid him gently down, surrounded by grieving neighbours. Then Liora stood and walked alone toward the river, armed with nothing but courage and an impossible choice. The eclipsing moon watched her go, weeping silver tears that would never reach the ground. The riverbank glowed red under the bleeding moon. Sorin stood at the water's edge, barely recognizable. His skin had turned pale and translucent, his eyes hollow, his body jerking like a puppet on strings. Behind him loomed his shadow, a towering beast made of smoke and hunger, its form shifting and writhing with terrible life. When Sorin saw Liora approach, tears streamed down his face. "Please," he begged, his voice breaking. "Kill me. End this before it destroys everything. I deserve death for what I've done." But Liora kept walking forward, each step deliberate, until she stood close enough to touch him. The shadow roared, trying to intimidate her, but she didn't flinch. "You made a terrible choice," she said quietly. "But I choose compassion." She placed her hand over the black mark on his palm. Warmth flooded from her touch, the silver courage given by the moon spirit. Light pushed against darkness. The shadow screamed, its form flickering, weakening. But then it sensed something, fear. Even now, some part of Sorin was still afraid, still doubting, and that tiny crack was enough. The shadow twisted and lunged, not at Liora, but at Sorin himself. It grabbed him with smoky claws and pulled, dragging him toward the water, where the moon's darkened reflection waited like an open grave. Liora screamed as Sorin disappeared beneath the surface. Liora didn't hesitate. She dove into the black water after him. The river was freezing, dark as void, and wrong in every way. The current pulled her down instead of up. She kicked hard, searching blindly, until her hands found fabric Sorin's shirt. He was tangled in his shadow like a fly in a web, the darkness wrapped around his throat, his chest, squeezing the last life from him. His eyes met hers, wide with terror and something else, regret. Liora grabbed his face with both hands. "I forgive you," she said, and meant it with her whole heart. The shadow convulsed. Forgiveness was poison to it. The darkness loosened its grip slightly, confused by mercy where it expected hate. But then Sorin's eyes shifted. He saw something drifting nearby in the murky water, another moon tear, small and silver, forgotten from the first night. Even now, even drowning, even after everything, greed sparked in his eyes. He reached for it. That single choice, that final act of selfishness, sealed everything. The curse recognized what lived in his heart and claimed him completely. The water turned pure black. The shadow smiled. Sorin was pulled down into depths that had no bottom, into darkness that would never release him. A single silver tear floated into Liora's hand. The village square fell silent as Liora returned, soaked and shaking, carrying the silver tear cupped in her palms. She knelt beside her father's still body. The eclipse above was complete now, the moon, fully darkened, the world cast in shadow. This was the moment between death and life, the breath before fate decided. Liora placed the tear on her father's chest. It sank into his skin like water into sand, and light exploded outward. Colour returned to his face. His eyes opened. He gasped and lived. The silver heron landed beside Liora, and before the village's amazed eyes, it transformed. The bird's shape melted into silver light, becoming the veiled moon spirit herself. She bowed deeply to Liora, a goddess, honouring a mortal. Above, the eclipse broke. The moon's face emerged from shadow, brighter than before, and silver rain began to fall. It fell on every roof, every river stone, every face turned skyward. The moon was mourning yet blessing, weeping yet rejoicing. Liora now carried the blessing that had been meant for her all along. The village understood. True worth cannot be stolen, only earned through the content of one's heart. And Sorin. He became a story told to children on dark nights, a warning about envy's price. Remember this: blessings meant for another become curses to the greedy, and compassion is the only light strong enough to break darkness.